Welcome to Grappling with the Gray, a forum for promoting an ethical mindset and ethical decision making to help us more clearly see both sides of complex issues and better navigate the moral challenges of everyday life. I'm Rabbi Emerson Goldson, and I'd like to welcome my guest. With me today is Lori Halverson, who is an executive coach, speaker, and Vistage chair, helping CEOs and top executives look forward to Mondays and flourish through positive intelligence. Alan Hauge is a master chair with Vistage International. He works with CEOs to devise strategies for success in business and in life. And Jeff Koziatek is an executive coach and keynote speaker, helping professionals to navigate change, sharpen focus, avoid burnout, and make a difference. He is also one of St. Louis Business Monthly's 100 St. Louisans you should know. And now you know. Thank you all for being here today.
Glad to be here.
Glad to be here.
And here is our topic for today. An employee posted the following on Reddit. I lost a schedule bid at work recently to an employee with far less seniority. The reason given to me was he is a single father, and that schedule works better with his son's school schedule. Not to be insensitive, but so what? My time is not less valuable because I have no kids. I get the logic, but I could not give a care about his schedule or his problems. I have done my time and I earned that bid, plain and simple. I have filed a grievance with HR. The crux of it is that I was discriminated against for not having kids in an attempt to get the schedule I bid on. A few coworkers have mentioned off the cuff that I should let it go because he's a single father. They've said, I don't get it because I don't have kids. Responses on Reddit were mixed. On the one hand, seniority should carry privilege. On the other hand, shouldn't actual needs trump personal preferences? What's the ethical approach to this kind of dilemma? And what can leaders do to navigate these kinds of conflicts? Laura, you said you found this one a little tough. May I ask you to go first?
I did originally found this a little tough. Yeah, because you're balancing these two sides of structure and compassion, right? And you want both in a company. And the other thing that I found interesting was I had a similar conversation with a client yesterday on it's a slightly different twist of this, but it's the same thing. Like, when do you make an exception for somebody? And in this case yesterday, it was similar in that it was a single mother who needed to have some work at home time, and they have a no work at home policy. So it's really interesting. And as I was thinking about it, and I've actually been talking with people about it because I found it so fascinating. And from my perspective, this is definitely a gray area, right? It's not black and white, and there's so many nuances to this. And what I came to think about was this is really about institutional trust. And it's really around a trust contract. And what is the trust contract that people have with their companies and their companies with their employees?
So can we develop that a little bit? Because when you say it's trust, and are you saying that when the company makes a decision that doesn't go my way, if there's a culture of trust, then I'm willing to accept that this was done in a responsible, even-handed way. And if there isn't a culture of trust, then I start suspecting that something unsavory may be going on.
Yeah, I think it builds the culture of trust. So it's what is the commitment? What is the contract with the employee? In this case, it's a little unclear because there's a lot of shoulds in the Reddit post, right? Um, and it's really around what was the contract? Is the contract that you get seniority? If you have seniority, that you trump other people with less seniority. If that's the contract, then that contract was broken. But if the contract was, there is a process and people understand what that process is and it was followed, then people feel like they're treated fairly, and it doesn't break down trust. So it's really around, this is how trust is built, not that you have trust and then what is the ramifications.
Mm.
So I don't know, Jeff, you have a look on your face. What are you thinking over there?
I love that the whole trust concept, and I mean the missing information that we have, to your point, what is the standard way of handling things there? Is it supposed to be seniority, and then did they break the rules for this guy? And then did they explain why, or was there any other justification there, or was it just done and were the rules thrown out? The first time that I heard this example, it reminded me of when I used to work at McDonald's, which was one of my first jobs. And I was not a smoker, but we had smokers on staff, and smokers got smoke breaks, and they would step out for 5, 10 minutes to smoke, and then they would come back. And I didn't smoke, so I didn't get smoke breaks. And I thought, well, wait a minute, we're getting penalized because we don't smoke. Maybe I should take a fry break to go out and eat some fries and then come back. And I think in both cases there was a lack of clarity around culture and why we do things. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm wondering what is the culture? Do they have clearly defined values that say this is what drives all of our decision making? And in the absence of that, and everybody is left up to their own devices to make up their own rules and expectations, and it sounds like that's what's happening.
When you have that lack of consistency, then you get into your trust issues that you're talking about, Lori.
Yeah, and then everybody's taking fry breaks.
That'll be the new thing now.
Yeah.
Right.
Alan, what do you think?
Well, I think in terms of where Lori and then Jeff are going with it, I kind of agree. There's a lack of clarity here. I always remember what Warren Bennis once said about leadership. Management was about dealing with complexity, and leadership was about providing clarity. And I would fault the CEO here, as frankly, in terms of a first principles type of thing. There should be some clarity around values, and then after that, policies. And it doesn't mean that everyone's necessarily going to like the decisions that get made, but without that clarity, then situations like this are always going to come up. And I think if people know, here's what our values are, here's what our policies are. One, when you come on board and as you're onboarded, I think situations like this, could be avoided. There's organizations where this is probably, given their values, perfectly reasonable, and there's probably other organizations where you would go with the person who's complaining. I mean, maybe if it's a union shop, there may be seniority there, and that's what's been negotiated, and those are the rules. So I guess the question is, what context has leadership created here? Because at the end of the day, that's going to govern. I may or may not like it, but if I know what that is before I join the organization, then I've made a contract that I'm going to accept that and live by it. I may not like it, but there's a consensus there that I can live with it, and I'm willing to live with it.
I think that's a critical point. The value of transparency, which isn't just a buzzword. It means that people understand the process, and as much as possible, they're brought in to the process. Because exactly what you said, Alan, if I see how the process works, how the decision is made, and I see it's done with integrity, even if I don't like the outcome, I can still be at peace with what happened. There's a case came up in a recent presentation I gave on ethical leadership. It was a story of an employee who had serious health issues, and HR wanted to give her paid time off, paid leave to be able to recover. And the CEO was inclined to follow their advice, but happened to mention it to a couple other team members. And they said, "You can't do that, right? She lives for her work. You send her home, she'll be dead in a month. She needs the work to keep her engaged and active and feeling valuable." And it was something that just was not even on the radar for HR or for the CEO. And then so the CEO said, "Well, what about the work that she's not able to keep up with?" And so the team said, "We'll take care of it. We'll step in and pick up the slack." Now imagine that the CEO had told the team, "Listen, she can't carry her load, but I want to keep her on. You're going to pick up the slack." What are you talking about? It's not my job.
Right.
But when they were part of the process, and it motivated them to step up and say, we want to fill in. We want to let her, have this opportunity, and we're willing to take on more on ourselves. Now you've got the most incredible win-win. And everybody's been part of the process. everybody's stepping up to look out for others and not just for themselves.
You know what I hear in that is control versus lack of control, right? So when if the CEO had just said, here's what, you guys are all going to step up here because here's what we want to do for this one employee, there's a lack of control, right? They're being told they have to do this, they don't have control over it. And yet when it's, hey, this is the situation, what can we do, and you're collaborative, then it's people have control and they're much more willing to step in and give of their time and themselves to help somebody else out. So yeah, that's one of the things that I noticed as you were talking through that. And I think it pertains to this case as well, right? This person didn't have control. They thought they had control. They thought they knew the system was predictable, and then it became unpredictable, right? And they had no control over what happened in the end. And which then they think, oh, I'm being treated unfairly. Let me take some action and go to HR, which is what they did.
Right. As opposed to going to her and saying, listen, you're really entitled to get what you're asking for, but we'd like you to look at the needs of this other employee and understand why, it might be more equitable for everyone, to let him have that. It reframes the whole discussion.
I think in a situation like this where there was clearly a lack of understanding around the values and ultimately the policies of the organization, that in this case, one thing the CEO might have done would have been to bring these two people together and say, hey, we've got a challenge here and we want to do right by both of you, and people support what they help create. So let's the three of us talk about what can be done here. And
Yeah.
just the thing about CEOs, and Lori will back me up on this, and Jeff, I'm sure you probably will too, is that a lot of times we're looking for this best answer, this optimum answer, this win-win-win all the way around. And when you live long enough, you realize that's not always possible, and that sometimes there isn't a good answer. There's only a best one. And leadership is about helping to define that and saying, here's the best we can do, and here's what we're going to do. In the case of if you have someone who's being fired for, sometimes an organization will grow past someone and there's just no way for them to contribute. And the way some of my members have handled that is they'll give the person very generous severance and outplacement and that type of thing, but they simply have to go. It's not going to work. Okay. And CEOs need to make these types of decisions. What I'm seeing here is some decisions that never got made or got avoided, that where the CEO really could have said, here's how we're going to do it here. I mean, and organizations are entitled to be different. I think the values and the culture of the Marine Corps is very different than Zappos, but they're both very effective organizations. Okay. And they are the way they are and have the rules they do because of what their mission is and what their values is. So I think, again, I come back to, I'm putting a lot of this on the back of the CEO. And I think the only thing that he or she might do here from a leadership standpoint is to say, I'm going to step in and the three of us are going to work on it. That would be leadership, my point of view. And I want to hear everybody, but then I'm going to make a decision. The CEO can't walk away from that. I want to know what you want to do, but at the end, it lands on my desk, and I'm the guy that's got to do it.
Yeah.
So are you saying that this was an ethical decision to give it to the dad, or it was an unethical decision?
I'm not saying either. All I'm saying is I think that I can see both sides. And the CEO, I think, has the opportunity here to bring these two people together and say, what can we work out? It's impossible, I think, to know what the right answer is here because you don't know what the culture of the organization is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if the single person is a high performer or not. You don't know if seniority is actually an entitlement as opposed to an assumption. There's just a lot that we don't know here. But this is since the leader didn't define things at the outset, he or she needs to come in and do it now and facilitate that, and then get clarity for everyone. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're not going to do. Here's who we are. Here's who we're not.
And you're touching on a point that comes up in virtually all of these discussions. There's always information that we don't have. There are all kinds of variables at play. And when you try to make decisions with incomplete information, you're setting yourself up for trouble. And that's where the communication comes in. Right? In this forum, we can't necessarily go find this person and ask her while we're here recording. So we have to examine the different possibilities. But if you're the CEO and the people involved are there, then you really do. And then, of course, the process, you have to know the process. But you have to have all that information in front of you. And then you can start looking at the variables and the most equitable way of resolving it.
Yeah. And it's interesting too because we don't know what the conversation was with that employee who's upset, right? Was it a collaborative conversation? Was it a hey, let's reset expectations? Was it based on curiosity, in terms of what are they thinking and how they reacted and what were they listened to or shut down? We don't know any of that, right? So it's
Was
hard
there
to
a
say,
conversation?
sorry, Alan.
Was there a conversation?
Yeah, was there? Yeah, right. Or was it just an email? Hey, this other guy got the shift, or
Yeah.
whatnot, right? And it's that piece of it is critical to listen and be curious and understand where it went wrong, so that you can collaborate, you can decide what to do, you can change the policy. Like it opens up so many more doors versus the person just went to HR. They obviously didn't get what they wanted originally, and they didn't get what they wanted through the process of being notified or finding out, however that looked, to not that they did not get what they wanted and what they had expected.
I think there's another issue here that we should at least throw out, and I'm not sure it's any more capable of resolution than anything else we're talking about, but with the information that we have. But it's like there's there has now been an issue put in front of the company. There's now drama, and everyone's watching how that's going to get resolved or not. Okay, and not making a decision is the same thing as making a decision.
Yes.
Okay, so I think
Mhm.
this now
Absolutely.
I've got to resolve this issue, but I've got to create clarity moving forward as to here's how we're going to do this in the future. Employees will put up with a lot, in my experience. Two things they won't put up with are unfairness and uncertainty. Okay, and the leader can
Customers too.
they may not always like it, but the leader can provide that. And if you're not providing it, then people are going to make up their own answers.
Yeah, and one of the topics that comes up a lot is that when people perceive unfairness, that makes them less ethical. If there isn't a culture where people are treated fairly, why should I hold myself to a higher standard?
Well,
Let me get
that
away with the minimum. Let me look after myself. I'm a little concerned about this employee, the way she expresses herself. And, we could chalk it up to frustration on her part, but the way she writes here, not to be insensitive, but so what? Well, that sounds a little insensitive to me. I
okay.
couldn't give a care about his schedule or his problems. I mean,
Jonathan, can I
how
ask
about
a question?
saying, how about saying, I understand he's got a problem, but at the same time, what about me? What about, did anybody ask me about my needs, about my schedule, about my commitments? Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I don't think it was clear when I read through this the first time that this particular employee was a female, and you're saying it was a woman.
I thought so. It could be that could be it was in the article that I took this from
Okay,
that
then
described,
then for the
but
sake of discussion, I'm gonna go to the other side and say that this was very unethical. I'm gonna make a stand for our discussion today and say that it was unethical and uh, uh, clearly she's looking at the guy being a father, but she's a woman, she's in the same situation, and so is he getting preferential treatment? Is it about the kid? Is it about him just being a guy and she's being overlooked again? She's been there forever. And if there wasn't clear parameters around how you how you advance or how you get your work schedule and who gets to work what shift and which hours, then this seemed like a very unethical thing to overlook her and go right to the guy and then throw out something like, well, he's got a kid, so we're working with his schedule and you just have to sacrifice. Yeah, that's it. I'm planting my flag. This was unethical. All right, go discuss. Tell me I'm wrong,
you're
Alan,
wrong.
Lori.
um,
Well, I'd only
you
say
know,
you're wrong because,
yeah.
yeah, what we've already covered that There should have been a conversation here. This should not have been just an executive decision that deprived her of her privileges of seniority without some sort of a discussion. But go ahead, Laura.
Well, it is great. Like I'm not in a position to take a stand because if I was going to take a stand, it would be really around truth and commitment and what the contract is, what their culture is, or what their contract says. If it was clear that they said, hey, seniority takes precedent, and then they gave it to somebody else, I can see why the employee is upset, right? Yet at the same time, if that was just their expectation, because and I don't know how much that exists today in the workforce, but it for many, many, many years, it's been, hey, if you're there longer, you get perks. And one of the perks is you get to choose your schedule, right? Or have, Christmas vacation off, and you get that over somebody else, or whatever that case is. And yet at the same time, the society is moving more to trying to accommodate people, and work-life balance is important, and these other things to keep employees. So it really depends on what the contract was. If it was that this person said, hey, um, this is just what I think should be, but it really wasn't in the policy. And so they made a different decision because they want to be a company that values families. And then I would disagree, right? Then they were fully ethical in making that decision. How they did it, it sounds like they could have done better, regardless, with the very little that we know, right?
Okay, then I'm taking my flag out. I'm placing on the other side. She's actually being unethical because clearly they have a people culture. They put out the bids. They made requests. They have an HR department, so they are clearly people first. And it was a bid. It wasn't a guarantee. So it wasn't like somebody earned the position moving forward. It was like you can bid for this and you can bid for this, and then they choose somebody. So I think it's really unethical for her to put her own needs above the teams when she works in an environment that is clearly people focused. Yeah, she's unethical, not the CEO. All right, discuss.
Alan, you're sitting there now. What do you think?
I'm sorry. I mean, I work with CEOs all the time. I'm not letting them off the hook. I mean, this happened because there wasn't clarity. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, evidently this person feels that they've got a shot to take it to HR and contest it, and that probably wouldn't be the case if there had been real understood policies around that. If there's a kid in this situation, and I think we need to acknowledge that anytime there is a child in a situation, there's going to be an unconscious but understandable bias towards the side of the issue that has the kid in it. Okay, I understand that. I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. Okay, but I think we need to acknowledge that. Okay, you may have someone on the other side here who this has been her entire career. She lives for this. She's been there a long time. We don't know anything about performance,
No.
but we don't know if it's good or if it's bad. But clearly, she's committed to this job. Where is she in that? So this is a mess that got created because there was a lack of structure, there was a lack of clarity, and the CEO is just going to have to step in and maybe make some unpleasant decisions. I think you can say both of them have good arguments on their side. Someone's going to have to decide which argument is best.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why leaders get the big bucks. Risk is part of the name of the game. You want to sit in that chair.
Yeah.
And
And then the next step is, what do they do about it? Right. So if it isn't clear, right, and the CEO doesn't do anything, this is where we all coach, right? To get people to take action and solve problems and build structures that work for their employees. So
they have to decide what their organization is about, what values are essential to delivering on the mission, and what they're going to tolerate and what they're not going to tolerate. Okay, and I'm just seeing kind of there seems to me to be kind of an implied dereliction of duty, or at least some negligence on the part of leadership here. I'm planting my flag on that, Jeff. I'm sorry. I just got to do that one. What's the old saying in every story? There's your version, my version, and the truth.
Yeah, that's what they say.
I'm not sure if I'd go as far as planning it on negligence. Definitely there's an opportunity, right, for the CEO and the leadership team to make some better choices and have better communication in their organizations.
Well, I would still call it. I'm okay to call it negligence. Maybe not criminal, not intentional, but there was this. This is not just a one-off thing. This is something that should have been thought through. Okay, this is if a CEO, the CEO has a responsibility to be forward-looking and saying, what do we need to have here in order to be true to our values and to live up to what kind of situations are we going to run into? And maybe you can't anticipate everything, but now he or she has to step up and say, my bad, I should have anticipated this. We don't have a rule or a policy. Here's what it is.
Yeah.
Now, you get input on that, maybe from the parties involved and other people, but at the end of the day, whoever's sitting in that chair gets to decide and has an obligation to decide so that there is clarity.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, would it change for you if let's say that they both had children or they both were single parents? Would it, and the one with less seniority got it? Would that change anything for you guys?
I don't know anything about performance here. Okay. I mean, there's just so much we don't know here. I think we could talk about the variables that ought to be taken into consideration. I think the one thing that I would hope we could agree on is that there's a lack of clarity. And where does that come from?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
Well, we know where lack of clarity comes from. It's always from the top.
Yeah.
Lori, they've got an HR director. It was a bid. They could submit and either they get it or they don't. I'm taking my flag off and I'm putting it back over here. It's the CEO that's being unethical because they clearly have the people-centric culture with the support and with the options, and for them to care about the father, but then not address this woman, the other employee, and talk to them about what's going on, then all the care and effort is going to the guy and not to her. That's unethical.
Hey, Jeff, processes, I get it. They got a process. They just don't have any criteria.
It sounds
No one's made the hard choices around that one.
We don't know
Say
that for
one more
sure.
time?
And it sure sounds like there's room for improvement on whatever it is. Yeah.
And Jeff, I'm pulling out your flag and hitting you over the head with it.
You said to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, okay. Playtime's over. Because the point is that there are two sides to this story. And what I'd like to shift a little bit and understand maybe as best we can the dynamics of the elements involved in this decision. There is the rights, let's say the frame is the right of the woman who has seniority, and there is the need of the man who has broader responsibilities. And it really leads to a discussion that is really, I think, one of the most critical discussions that we need to have, not just in business, but in our entire culture. I think things have been going south ever since the Declaration of Independence about the inalienable rights. Because yes, we do have rights, but we also have responsibilities. And those two go together. And if I'm demanding my rights and you're demanding your rights, we're going to be bumping heads all the time. But if I'm looking at what's my responsibility and you're looking at what's your responsibility, chances are we're going to find a way to meet somewhere in the middle. And that's what I see is missing. Not to dismiss your point, Alan, that really this should have been handled, or yours, Lori, this should have been handled by the CEO or the people in charge. But just the mindset of what are the needs of others in my organization? And when is it appropriate for me to say, even though I have the right to demand what I'm demanding or what I want, I'm serving a larger good, a greater good, a larger truth, a bigger picture, right? By foregoing my rights in order to accommodate the needs of others.
Is there a question in there, Jonathan? It was
what are your thoughts?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem to be implying that the best outcome here is a compromise. Is that, am I reading you right?
Well, I suppose ideally that's very often the best outcome. It's not always possible.
No,
I want to offer the best outcome would be collaboration and communication and conversation, right? Or that's how you get to the best
That's how
outcome,
you get the best outcome. Yeah.
right? Alan,
well,
sorry, go ahead.
I would just I don't disagree with you, Laura. I think what I would add on to that is I think consensus is a word that gets used a lot, and it's not well defined. And I had a Vistage speaker once explain this to me. He said, a consensus is when you and I are having some sort of disagreement about something, but there's a larger issue here, and you and I agree that um, what that there may be a third opportunity here that we're not crazy about, but we can live with in order to serve the greater good. Okay, so that's what a consensus is in terms of one definition. I think there's going to be times when it just doesn't work for someone. I mean, it's entirely possible that there's an ethical situation where one of these two people has to go, depending on what the organization is about. But if that's the case, let's do everything we can to help them move on to something that's even better. Let's do generous severance. Let's do outplacement. Let's give them extra cobra. But Lori, have any of your members ever fired someone too soon?
I know.
No.
Never.
So yeah,
Mm.
and we drag it out and we drag it out. So
Yeah.
I get back to clarity. What's the right answer? Because at the end of the day, if the organization isn't served, it will degrade.
Yeah.
And we can help people move on and have a good life. I don't think people are entitled to outcomes. They're entitled to opportunities, whether that's with the company or outside it, and the company can help them with either one.
Ooh,
Mhm.
could you say that one more time? That sounded really wise, Alan.
Well, I think I don't think I think people are entitled to opportunities and not outcomes.
Yeah.
I think there's too much risk in the world for that. But what leadership can do is to say, we're going to try to get you the best outcome that we can in the company. You may not like your job every day, but you can like it well enough to stay here. Or if you don't, we're going to help you move on.
Yeah.
Because we want you to say good things about, we want you to be happy. We value you that much as a person that at least we're going to, it may not be the best answer. It may not be a good answer, but it's going to be the best that we can do. And if we're satisfied that we've done the best we can do, I'm not sure how to do much better than that.
Yeah, and I think that point is really critical, Alan, the difference between opportunities and outcomes. I think that's why we're in the midst of this diversity and inclusion um, kerfuffle. That diversity and inclusion is a value. I mean, it's important to have diverse, inclusive culture, right? But when you implement it in a way that's attempting to create outcomes as opposed to opportunities, you're breeding resentment. You're actually increasing um, racism in many cases, or sexism, or gender, or ageism, or all the other isms that we talk about, because you're pitting people against each other, and you're creating a much more fractured and divisive, as opposed to diverse, culture. Because ultimately, outcomes are never going to be 100% equitable. That's just not reality. But as we've been saying again and again, if you have a process that is doing everything it can in a way that's transparent and clear and equitable to achieve the best possible outcomes, then even when things don't work out in an ideal way, people can still be at peace with that.
Mhm.
I did not expect you to go DEI today. That was
I
shocking.
went D&I. I try to I do diversity, ethics, and inclusion.
Right.
Yeah.
This one
Yeah.
was a really difficult conversation to have and play devil's advocate on because I'm a big values guy. That's what I'm certified in. That's all my coaching is around that. And so when you present this situation, it just seems very clear that the decision maker had a different set of values than this particular employee, and that there was not clarity and alignment around that. And so in the absence of that, it's easy to take everything personal. Um, and so for them to come back and get really clear on that, it takes the personal attack off the table, and we just root everything back in values. At least,
Well, you root it in something. The values are a good place to start. And I'll echo again, with the clarity concept. And for me, it's about this trust contract, right? People want predictability. They want to know what to expect. And if leadership can't create that, then and if they can't have conversations when they deviate with what's expected and the predictability, if their leadership team doesn't, they don't have the capability to have those conversations, then you end up with people going to HR. You end up, now you can see there's team discord because some of the other team members were like, well, what are you doing? Like, this guy is a single dad, like, give him a break or whatever. And
right.
so there's lots of discord that comes out of not having predictable systems, or not having it be like, hey, we're going to do what's best for the overall employee, as a whole, right? So today it might be his turn, tomorrow it might be her turn. If she has some need that, needs to be supported in terms of a work schedule, or whatever it looks like. So,
Yeah.
and I think that a lot of companies are lacking that clarity and just those guardrails, right? And I like the guardrail concept instead of a, hey, this is, black and white, because there are always situations that come up. As we know, we've led for a long time, we've coached for a long time, uh, and having guardrails that you could say, we move within this, this space. And sometimes we can do it based on who's most senior, and sometimes, there's a need that we want to fulfill, because we have as a company, we have a heart and we have values, and we care about our employees, and we want to do what's ultimately right, to the best of our ability. So it's not black and white. That's why I'm not putting a stake on either way. One, we don't have enough information to.
No, we don't.
And that's
Yeah.
why we're grappling with the gray.
Yeah.
There's a term in Hebrew I've been struggling for a long time to find an adequate translation for it. It means essentially to forego one's rights, to overlook not getting what one wants, or insult, or that type of thing. Uh, and the sages praise someone with this ability to let it go. Um, it's some of the worst advice you can give anybody when they're upset. Let it go. Okay, how do I do that? I'm upset. I feel wrong. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. Let it go. Thanks. That was helpful. Um, but to cultivate in ourselves the predisposition to not hang on to these things, is something that's really valuable for us as individuals and for us as a culture. If I can look at a situation and say, I really want this, I'm really entitled to this, but there's someone with greater need, or there are situations, there are complexities that make it less than ideal or disadvantageous for me to insist upon what I'm entitled to. If we're all doing that, then
There
we're going to
was,
function together in a way that's much healthier. When it breaks down is when I feel like I'm the one who's being asked to let it go, and I don't feel there's any reciprocity to accommodate me. Alan, you have something on that?
well, there was a Vistage speaker, Lori, I think you might have missed him. He was around a number of years. His name was Pat Murray, and he had the best stuff on leadership and group dynamics. And we became pretty good friends. And he said once to me, he said, the question you have to ask yourself is, when this is over, what do I want people to say about me? And it was really kind of forcing yourself to get out of yourself and look at yourself from the outside, which I think really good leaders are able to do that. And I'm still struggling. I get the concept, but I still struggle with it. But asking yourself, I mean, down the line, what would you have said or written about you in terms of this particular situation can be rather sobering in the moment once you realize that you're bringing a lot of your own needs and fears to a particular situation, and that that admonition from him has helped me get past a couple things in life. So
Yeah. He's a legend.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I've heard it framed a little differently as live for your obituary.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
What do I want people to say about me when I'm not here anymore? What do I want them to remember?
Mm-hmm. Mhm.
Any final thoughts?
I'm curious what you guys think about this situation that I was talking about earlier, where I have somebody who's looking to hire somebody who's going to need some work at home time. It's minimal, but there's other employees who want to work at home, and it looks like they're making the decision to hire the person and then deal with the fallout, right? So it's about how you deal with that and how you explain that. But I'm curious if you guys have a flag either way of saying no, we should never, shouldn't hire a person and go into it knowing that there's going to be a contract with that person that they can work at home for a few hours a week.
I think we could probably do several hours on the work from home thing, Lori.
Yeah.
But this has come up from time to time in the Vistage groups, and I just to kind of crystallize it, the recommendation is you have to have a reason for what you're doing.
Mhm.
Does 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 that person have an unusual capability or such a different level to perform than the people are going to be complaining that you can make the case that here's why I made the decision.
Mhm.
Again, I get back to
Mhm.
the uncertainty versus unfairness. If if it's uncertain, they'll make up their own answer, and if it's unfair, then they're never going to
Yeah.
forget it. So they need
Yeah.
to
If
know
they feel it's unfair.
exactly. Here's what I did. Here's why I did
Mhm.
it, and you'd be working from home too for this many hours if you were in the same place.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it any better than that. You know.
Yeah.
Jeff, what about you? You're like flag.
I got lots of flags. Flags make panel discussions much more interesting to watch.
Are they all red flags?
Yeah, red flags, yellow flags, and I got cards. You get a red card. Um, no, if you've got an organization that has a no work from home policy, and then you're going to hire somebody who can work from home for a few hours, that will inevitably cause disruption. So, to Alan's point, is there something about this person that makes them a unicorn where they're an absolute hire, and we need to change and accommodate for them? And if you know getting back to why they're being brought in, and if not, um, then recognizing I think Jocko Willnock talks about it in Extreme Ownership. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And if the
Mhm.
leadership is going to let this slide over here with the work from home policy, what else is up for grabs? And can we start pushing over here, and can we start testing the guardrails over here? It seems like a recipe for a lot of fallout management. And if they're willing to go there, then that'd be a wonderful opportunity to grow.
Well, I get back to Lori's thing on guardrails, which I thought was a really good point, and that is, if you have a strictly black or white policy, then you're always going to be trapped by that.
Yeah.
I think with the whole work from home thing, I think the enlightened policy the CEO would say is, everything else being equal, we expect you to be here at work. However, to serve the needs of the organization from time to time, there may be people that will be working from home, and it'll be clear why they're working from home. And if
Yeah.
you're in that position, you'll have the opportunity to work from home, but it's not a right. It is a condition of employment for particular things. So it's really about creating. I mean, you can't create perfect certainty, but you can create enough, and this is where the guardrails come in, where again, people may not like it, but they'll there won't be a basis for objective unfairness anyway. There's some people going to be resentful no matter what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to the needs of the company, right? Like in this particular case, this person brings something that is of great value to the organization. And so that's part of the equation, is that you have to do what's best for the company. And you balance that with what's best for the people. And sometimes it means, hey, you're going to have somebody who's going to work at home for a couple of hours. It doesn't mean it's going to apply to everybody else, because it's something that the organization needs, and there's a reason behind it, and it can be articulated and communicated and supported, and
Yeah,
it's within those guardrails, right?
and that's the key.
That's why the black and white is hard.
And whenever you make exceptions, you're setting yourself up for these kinds of problems, which doesn't mean that you should never make exceptions, because sometimes, as you say, it's appropriate to do that. And
Yeah.
just because something is unequal doesn't mean it's unfair if there's a basis
Yeah.
for making the exception.
Yeah.
It's the willingness to look at the bigger picture and to look at the specifics of
Yeah.
the situation involved and the people
Yeah.
involved and
Yeah.
say that, in this case, there's a reason why we're making this exception. And then, as you say, be able to articulate why that's different from the next person who comes and asks for a because if you can articulate it clearly, then we're back to what we've been saying all along. People might not like it, but at least they can respect it.
Mhm.
And it's really important that this whole philosophy of just really kind of be part of the onboarding when people come in. I mean, spraying on them after the fact is not helpful. People,
Yep.
you know, I think if you front load it up front in terms of here's expectations, here's what will happen, here's what will never happen, then if you're clear, then people come in when those things do happen. It's not a surprise. They understand it. They may not like it, but they can't say they weren't told. Okay,
Yeah.
and people either
Yeah.
adjust to that and they prosper in the organization, or as is often said in my groups, they're made available to industry. I mean, there's opportunity, but not outcomes. I get back to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fly.
Sometimes people need to fly, and sometimes people need to be, encouraged out of the nest. Yeah,
That's why
unfortunately,
for
but
me it all comes back to values, because values gives us a very clear path forward and allows some margin to bob and weave. And you can expand the guardrails a little bit, you can contract them a little bit, and you're not locked into a black and white. And when we honor those values repeatedly, and if we break the values, we can come back to it. I think that just enhances the trust, Lori, that you were talking about earlier, and then allows us to keep moving forward. But
Mhm.
if we're acting out of alignment with those values, then the unfairness mounts, and so does the trust, and then you've got the
Mhm.
five dysfunctions of a team, and then everything just falls apart.
And I think it'd be better if companies spent maybe a little more time at the beginning on, what are the appropriate values. Jim Collins had an article once where he said, if you want to see if your values are any good, ask yourself which ones would you shut the company down for before you violated them. That's a good test.
Mhm.
That is a good test. And the thing I love about this is, Laura, you know that it's a trust, challenge, caring, growth. I mean, it's I've I those are in my mind all the time, and I'm sure they're in yours. And it really helps in terms of understanding.
Yeah.
Here's what I can or should do with a member. Here's what I can or can't or shouldn't do with a member. But what's well begun is half
Absolutely.
done. And if the values were maybe a little bit better defined up front and then articulated during onboarding, a lot of these problems get headed off at the pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
Absolutely.
a challenge that we face, really, that what used to be considered universal values are not universal anymore. And when people are coming from such different ideological points of view, it makes it a lot harder to come together. I was on a board at one point, and we wanted to articulate our values, and it took us a few months of brainstorming and organizing our thoughts and arranging them, and we eventually got down to 5 core values with a definition or an explication of each that we all felt good about. But it was and just the process itself. It wasn't really the process of, you know, identifying our values as clarifying them and articulating them and contextualizing them. And if we don't go through that process, then we're going to run into more situations like this.
You should have hired me, Giannis, and we're gonna knock that out in a day.
We didn't have a budget.
Oh my goodness.
Mm.
Well, thank you, folks. This has been particularly engaging, thoughtful, to no surprise. Um,
Thank you. It's been
Yeah.
great.
Thank you for having us. It was really fun. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Holy
For
cow.
those of you who are watching, listening, if you would like access to the backstage conversation that sometimes continues after the main part of the program, go to my Substack. You can look into becoming a premium member to get access to those. If you have a topic you'd like us to take up some future time, Go to my website, ethicsninja.com, use the contact information, submit your idea if it's compelling. We'll use it for a future episode. And for now, Lori Halverson, Alan Hauge, Jeff Koziatek, thank you so much. Appreciate you and your
Thank you.
wisdom. And as always, we encourage you to continue grappling with the gray.